Anyways, we're going to be talking about craft fair shenanigans today, for sure. Things I have learned, things I have not learned. Anyways, yeah, craft fair this weekend. I have a lot of notes about it. I have a lot of things to think about. Most notably, the fact that I'm not sure that it was really worth doing. I could get my books into people's hands that wouldn't have been able to do so from exposure on Twitch or the other social media I have. So it's not nothing. But it was an awful lot of work for the not nothing it was. Anyhow, where do I start? I don't know that we're going to get much writing done this morning, but I have a lot of stuff to think about. I don't handwrite anything, right? I'm out there and I'm writing down things that I didn't think of. This list is 25, 20, 30 items long or something like that. So yeah. But yeah, this list is 30 items long of things that, oh, I should have remembered to bring X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, the rest of the alphabet. Like something as simple as I should have brought scissors. Why didn't I bring scissors? I knew I needed something to tie my banner with. Why didn't I bring something to tie my banner with? So we kludged a whole lot of things together to make it work that first day. And since it worked the first day, we left it the second day. So I didn't even benefit from it. But yeah, it was an experience. I had it in my head that there was some underground of the craft fair scene that was going to give me trouble. I don't know where that thought came from. I was telling Greenbean about it. And she's like, where do you come up with this? It's a craft fair. That said, I was overhearing other people talk about one of the other craft fairs in the area, and there totally is an underground in the craft fair industry. Like someone trying to squeak money out of other craft fair goers or whatever. Yeah, a nice boosie got there. Shame if something happened to it. Well, that's the other thing. They made sure to point out that, it's a 2-day event. You don't have to take things down between days, but at the same time, there's no security here, so you can leave your stuff at your peril. Basically, they suggested bring your stock home, but leave your setup. So I left my desk there. I left my canopy there. I left my banner there. That was actually the toughest thing to do. The canopy is infinitely more useful to somebody than my stupid banner. But I'm like, do I really want my banner to be stolen? But in any case, as far as I know, no one had any problems. So we left it there. It was fine. All the other events I'm doing so far are 1-day events. I hadn't signed up for the Wells one in the fall. For 2 reasons. It's another 2-day event. It's more expensive than this event. And I wanted to, they also had a thing of they wanted a full picture of what your setup is and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't even have that yet. I don't know what I'm doing. So I figured after this event, I would have that information, right? But what I have now is I don't want to pay even more per day than this event. This event was hopping busy. I've been to the Wells one. It is not that hopping busy. And it's very difficult for me to be like, oh yeah, I'll totally sign up for something even more expensive. And potentially worse. But anyways, like I was saying, I was talking with, or I was overhearing other people talk about other events that they go to and stuff like that. And apparently there's craft fairs in the area that charge $700 for a table. And it's just, that is a number. It's hard for me to go back and look at this and be like, yeah, it was successful when I looked at both my neighbors bringing in, and I have no clue what numbers they actually brought in, but I'd estimate they pretty easily broke $4,000 a piece. Because they had things that people can just go up to and pick up and buy. You know what you can't do with a random author that you've never heard of? Or maybe some people can't. I actually can do this. But like, you can't just go up to somebody and be like, I'll try your book out for you know, I've never heard of you. I'll just try your book. There's very few people that were like that. There were a couple, but very few. So what I found is I had to like draw people in. I caught someone staring off into space in my general direction. And I'm just like, you can read the book a lot easier if you're closer to the table. And that got her to chuckle and she came over or whatever. I had another one where I was just like standing in front of my booth and this mother and her daughter were walking by. And I asked the daughter, who's a teenager, you know, what do you like to read? And she just like deer in headlights, full on. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I'm not allowed to talk to teenagers. And so, you know, that started a conversation. It didn't result in a sale, but it started a conversation. And there was a lot of, you know, the few people that came over to the desk without being prompted. I had to explain what the books were before they would even like venture to pick it up off the table, right? Like, I guess I could put out things that describe the books on their own. And like, a lot of people were interested once I said, oh, this book is weird fiction, right? I was flabbergasted by that. But I don't know if I had a sign that said weird fiction with Anthropods right there, if they'd be drawn in on that or not. But that's one of the things I would like to explore. Excuse me. What else? I want to just have a sign that says, what do you like to read? And that's as much for me to remind myself to ask people what they like to read. And that will help me frame how I describe my books to them. But also, like, I might need to tell people weird fiction is not cosmic horror. I don't think I had any of that. And here's another thing about, I'm going to get distracted a lot today, so just get used to it. Here's the thing. A lot of the things that surprised me were like, I would have 60s and 70-year-olds come over and I would like instinctively say, this book is breakfast. It's got contemporary realism in it, thinking there's no way they're interested in the weird fiction description here. But I will say people were drawn to Anthropods a lot better than they were to breakfast. And as soon as I said weird fiction, a lot of those folks picked up the book and held it. Because as soon as I start describing an ice cube doing a revolution, a crab that's looking for love, told from the crab's perspective, a raccoon picking a fight with a traffic cone, and like ladybugs on a beach, that is of course a horror story. People were drawn into it. And so, yeah, I think I misjudged what people are actually looking for. I will also say, I mean, granted, I'm trying to make generalizations out of 14 fair tag optimization. Fair. Instead of so like I recognize I'm talking about like 14 book sales over the course of the entire day or entire 2 days, and some of those were 2 books to people, right? I basically sold to 2 groups of people. Those who are much older than me and those who are in their teens. So I don't know. Apparently I've missed the 20 to 60 age range somewhere in there. But the other thing is, like, people who were in their 20s would happily stop at the candle shop and wouldn't even give me a second glance. People who were in their 40s would happily stop at the wind chimes shop and the candle shop, for that matter. Everybody stopped at both of them, really. But they wouldn't necessarily stop at the book, because people go to craft fairs and I think they're not actually looking for books. So, which brings me to one learning lesson here. I'm not sure that a book fair or a craft fair is actually the right place to sell my books. There was one other bookseller there. She writes prolifically romance set in the York and Wells, Maine area. Like this is hyper targeted to this particular audience. I think she does quite well. I honestly don't know. I have never felt comfortable enough going up to another author and been like, you know, what do you get for sales over here? Right. And it's not like I could see her booth from mine. So like, there's no way for me to like gauge on how much traffic she was getting. But she's done this particular craft fair a number of times. I have stopped in there. But like her booth is set up as a wall of books, right? That are all outward facing. And she stands behind that. And it's like I don't know, not shoulder height, but maybe just below shoulder height counter. And as a result, you see only books. But since they're all like the same genre, the same story, I don't know that there's a whole lot of comparison I can get out of that. But when Miss Mitchell was mentioning that, you know, going up to a book booth is intimidating, that booth is intimidating to me. Like I go up to it and I'm like, I don't want to even approach this. And I would like to do something where people do feel like they can approach it, right? And I think part of that is get that 10-foot tent so that people can actually enter the tent. Whereas like I basically spent 90% of the time that I could standing outside of my own tent so that, you know, people would come up to me and talk to me, essentially. And maybe I would still do that if I had the tent set up differently, but I do think I need to have gewgaws for sale. Like I had my shoulder hey hey, I had my squeaking hey hey on the ground in front of the table. Like having only books for sale means that if I've missed the mark on, you know, anything about the books at all, they will buy nothing from me. And I think just giving them an opportunity to pick up a bookmark, pick up a business card, even though I hate those things, you know, something else will at least give them some incentive to be in there. It's too easy to write off my table as, oh, there's just books here, I'm not interested. There was one woman who absolutely fought with me. She was not a reader. I said, all you have to do to become a reader is to pick up a book. Oh, I don't have time for that. Fine. like she stopped long enough to actually talk to me, but she absolutely would refuse to be convinced that, yes, you could in fact be a reader. So, yeah. So I'm aware that Spooktastic Book Fair happens in Framingham once a year. I think they're specifically looking for horror authors, and I would like to get involved there, but yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, oh, you don't have time? Oh, well, guess what? My stories are short. I have some stories that are a page long. You can read that, right? But yeah, she just refused to be convinced. And, you know, I put all the effort I could into everybody that stopped by. Some that worked for and some it didn't. I totally am a sucker for kids. The first day we had this seventh grader come over, and she wanted to hear about the books, and I told her about Anthropods, and she was really excited about it. And then she asked how much it was. I said it was 17, and she's like, "Oh, I only have 10." And meanwhile, she had told me that her father writes horror games, which I still need to check out what the horror game was that he wrote. And she enjoys reading horror and stuff like that. And she was really looking for stuff like that. So I sold it to her for 10. And then she came back the next day and told me how much she liked Chatbot and how much she liked The Cube. And and she hung out with us basically all day on Sunday too. She was a sweet girl. Her mother had a booth elsewhere in the fair, so that was neat. Then there was that other kid that, their guardian basically said, "Oh, you don't read, and that's why you can't have this thing that you want." And I was just like, but he just told me that he reads manga, which probably means to you he doesn't read. But to anybody who understands that people read it all different things, that counts. I was incredibly frustrated with this lady. So when he came back the second day, I was just like, do you want my book? And he nodded. And I said, yeah, take my book. It's like, I don't understand. I said, I'm giving you my book. Enjoy it. Read it. And that opens up a whole host of other things. Like, I don't know. I hope he doesn't get in trouble. I hope I don't get in trouble for it. But like, there's nothing in Anthropods that is inappropriate for a 12-year-old. I had another person who was like, "Oh, I'm looking at this for my grandson." I said, "Okay, how old is he?" "Oh, he's 8. I said, "All right. Well, there's nothing in here that I would consider inappropriate for an 8-year-old. There are topics in here that they may not understand and they'll grow into, but there's definitely stories in here that they'll enjoy and stuff like that." And I said, "Here's the content warnings page. This is exactly what you need to worry about as far as, difficult topics." But I did say, all the adult scenarios that you might be worried about, really, they happen off screen. They're not even front and center. It's all referenced. And unfortunately, the guy put it back down. I was just like, if you're worried about your 8-year-old reading, Imaginary Friend, right? That's a story about suicide. But you know what? The kid does not commit suicide. He's just dealing with suicidal thoughts. I think it's an important story. I do. So I can only do so much. I had another woman who came by who was like, "I'm looking for a book for my daughter-in-law. She just got through chemo and she's having a hard time of it." And, you know, she's in Seattle, so the weird fiction is completely up her alley. And I'm just sitting there, what makes being from Seattle? But whatever, fine. And then she says, after she buys it, she's like, yeah, and I never do anything right in her view, so hopefully this book will make it things right. And I'm just like, oh, crap. You read Lunchroom last night? Might be your favorite so far? Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Lunchroom is the epitome of the weird fiction aspect, right? Like, I'm trying to describe this story from the perspective of error logs or not even error logs, but like logs of an automated lunch kitchen. I had a great deal of fun writing that story and I really love it. So I'm glad that it's your favorite so far. You're not the first person to have said that, tell him. Yeah. No, that was good. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, there was a lot of, like, again, I had to convince people that it was okay to read. I would like to set up a reading nook in there. Talking about like just a couple of Adirondack chairs, a little bit of a sitting space. I like that. That'd be cool. Yeah. No, I think it would be good. But again, until I have the larger tent, I can't do that because every time I was going in and out of the tent, I had to duck my head to go in and out. So, certainly there are some people that can do that without ducking their head. I'm not one of them. Reading in order, a bit to go yet. At 1 to 2 per day or just before bed. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I certainly don't mind people taking their time reading the book. Like, I recognize these are short books. They're easy to just like consume and be done with. And I'd much rather you spend some more time thinking about it, right? There were a bunch of people who scanned, I say a bunch, there were a couple of people who scanned my QR code for my newsletter specifically to sign up. No one signed up. I did have a notebook out to sign up for the newsletter, and I had 2 people sign up that way. So I sent them a message last night. Just to, you know, tell them that they're on my mailing list and, you know, basically that this is a manual mailing list. If you want to be taken off of it, just let me know. I'll take you off. It's really not that big a deal. So yeah. And since I'm going into that, I'll just throw this out there. I will be putting together a newsletter, which will not be content from my blog. It'll be other things. It'll be less frequent than my blog. So anybody that wants that, there you go. And again, it'll be all manually done. So no mass spammings or anything like that. There was a couple of vendors, and I don't know how much this is allowed, but like you have your designated space, right? There were a couple of vendors that just like push the boundaries of that space, put a little 2-sided sign up that, you know, says, you know, stop here for jewelry or whatever. And like, I don't want to push the boundaries of my space, but I think having a little sign like that does make a difference of drawing people in. So I'd like to do something like that. So yeah, there's that. Having a bag or something with a logo on it, I think would make a difference. Like, I was thinking I didn't want to have a bag for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons was just like, if someone has my book in hand, you're more likely to have seen my book, right? Whereas if they are, if it's in a bag, now I need something on my bag to designate that this is mine. So that people will be like, ooh, where'd you get that fancy bag from? And I don't really want to perpetuate that, right? But if I were to do something like that, I would need a logo and I would need to design something that is catching enough that people can do that. And that kind of goes towards having business cards, having something else that can generate, some amount of visual cue of, oh, I saw this from some passerby walking by. Let me check out what they bought, right? So those are things I'm thinking about. And of course, all those things do cost some amount of investment into it. So I need to be careful of what I invest into. But we'll see. Oh, I was going to talk about, instead of craft fairs, book fairs, right? So the Spooktastic Book Fair happens in Framingham once a year. They get a bunch of horror authors to go to that. I don't know that they are accepting anybody that is self-published over there, but I would love to get Portals in there and thereby getting me there with my other books, right? So I would like to look at that. But I know there are other events like that going on. I heard about one in Connecticut the weekend after, or like I found out about it on Sunday and it had just ended or whatever. And that was a book crawl, like down the street. They had some 30 odd authors down the street. And that's something I should look into and find where they are. And I just don't even know where to search for these things. So I'm going to have to do some searching. But we'll see how it goes. Not having Venmo / PayPal / Apple Pay nearly cost me a sale, but Green Bean was able to cover me for Venmo for that one person. And I think I want to see if I can make coffee, if people can contribute to coffee without creating an account. Because if they can contribute to coffee without creating an account, then I don't need those other things. Like, I think you can purchase through Venmo into coffee, and I think you can purchase through PayPal into coffee and stuff like that. And if I can do that, then that means I don't have to set up something new, and it'll work for all of them, and that's good, right? And if it requires them to create an account, it's a big problem. Like, creating an account is the barrier there. So I need to look into that. And oh my God, I wanted a QR code for everything. So I already have a QR code on my banner, which goes to my author website. I have a QR code on my little flyer that is to sign up for my newsletter, right? Well, one person wanted to buy my books as ebooks. Well, I don't have that link on hand out in public, right? Like, I can recite it, but that doesn't necessarily help them get there. So I was like, crap, I could have, if I just had the QR code for my books as ebooks. Maybe I just need to have like a binder with all the QR codes for everything. I don't know. It's weird where I am 100% an online presence and being in public in a non-online forum and being like, oh yeah, I need all these links to these online places in an analog way. So I don't know, something to consider. Coffee claims they can handle sales payments. All right. Yeah, I'll have to look into it more. I just need to make sure I understand it. And like other things, like just my Goodreads, right? Like, people are asking me if I'm on Goodreads. Well, yes, I am. I don't happen to have my link for that right off the top of my head. So, yeah. So I use my little desk as my table. And I actually kind of liked it because it was small enough for my 7-foot canopy. But at the same time, it was kind of crowded. And if I ever get a third book up there, it'll be very crowded. So I do have an 8-foot table. I didn't have enough room in the car this time to bring it up. But I do think I need the bigger table. My initial assessment that I didn't want to have a table until I had a third book was more evident than I ever could have imagined. Like, I had 14 books sold total, right? $14 books sold total. 8 of those were I sold both books. Of the remaining 6, I gave one away to a kid and I sold one at a discount to a kid, right? Like, and I have some guesses that some of the people that bought the 2 books would most definitely have bought the third, right? And buying that third book would have made a huge difference on just like getting a little bit higher. But it's always tough to know, of course. But